the thing that this tool has done that's really impressive is they've dropped the latency to so low. Like the model that I'm looking at right now has 750 milliseconds response time. So I mean, we're talking about near essentially human level response time. Like you finish talking and it is able to respond with an intelligent response immediately.
1, 2, 3, 4.
The Automated Lawyer Podcast. I am one of your hosts, John Fritz, and I'm joined with my co-host, Dan Schnurbusch. Dan, what's going on today?
Morning, John. I am geeking out right now. Like, cause just before we got on this call, I just started playing around with this new tool called VAPI.ai. This was something Martin Kravchenko, he was a prior guest on the show, he introduced me to, and I hadn't really taken the time to explore it. This thing is blowing my mind. I mean, what it is it's an AI voice agent that can talk through your phone lines, and it follows your instructions just like a custom ChatGPT bot would. Like you can give it the context you want. Like, here's who you are. Here's the kind of things you should say. Don't give legal advice. Yada yada. And it's what it is a combination of three models. So you have a voice model that like creates the synthetic voice, and you have a transcription model that takes the text of the conversation, turns it into text, or the voice of the conversation, and then it feeds it into a language model like OpenAI or whatever to give it a brain. And basically, VAPI is kind of giving you the interface to play with that and put these pieces together, and then a bunch of fun tools like you can upload like long documents of like knowledge bases and stuff. And I was messing around with it this morning, and it is wild. It sounds real depending on which voice you're picking, and it can extract data from the call, like caller name and email and stuff. I'm blown away right now. I'm blown away right now.
I mean, honestly, I think you're onto something special here, and just describing the general principles and the outline of how it works. Especially when it can tie in, let's say, we both recently talked about custom GPTs and building those for our firms. If you could build in your custom GPT knowledge base, right, that's highly controlled. I know it's probably not the best thing to, at least in these early stages, to have, a custom GPT answering client questions directly. But I think that if you start with the basics, and you simply, implement, a call script for an initial intake call, right, and go from that point, that basis, I think you're really onto something, honestly.
Yeah, it's really interesting because the thing that I find particularly neat about where we're at now with language models is just how realistic they sound, number one, and how the thing that this tool has done that's really impressive is they've dropped the latency to so low. Like the model that I'm looking at right now has 750 milliseconds response time. So I mean, we're talking about near essentially human level response time. Like you finish talking and it is able to respond with an intelligent response immediately. Like and extract data from that. Like that you can input into your CRM or whatever like that. It's just bananas. Like, I mean, I haven't yet fiddled around with like giving it a knowledge store and seeing like how that works. Because I have noticed when we build our own custom GPTs and you upload a lot of knowledge, it can sometimes slow down the response quite a bit. Like it'll take, I don't know if you've noticed this, but it'll take it longer to produce a response because it's referencing a material. So I don't know if we'll have to see how well that works, but it's very interesting. So that's been my obsession so far this morning, and we'll see where this goes with the rest of the week.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that came to mind is that, and something that I'm working on training my custom GPT, her name's Eleanor, I've talked to you about it. I'm training her to be a knowledge tree for intake, right? And so that you can basically put in, specific parameters about the case, like here the assets are, the debts are, the date of death is, right? The people surviving, the surviving people are, right? And then saying, what is the best way to reduce debts? And it's learning so fast and so awesome that it's coming almost extremely close to what I would actually say when it comes to how to get the assets through probate. So if you had kind of a system that, what you're just talking about, but it live feeding the information in the call and then it pulling up on the screen for my intake people, right? And they're going, here's all the information based upon the data from the call. that puts it into puts it into the custom GPT, which then has it on the screen, right, and says,
Yeah.
this is a small estate affidavit after 1 year to avoid debts, right?
Yeah.
That's the level that's where I want to go, and that's what I'm trying to get to the point of doing, where it doesn't need to be a lawyer, right, to actually do the intake. It can be somebody who is using all these great AI tools, and that you have this trained system to be able to assist with that, right? Obviously, whether or not you need a human involved is a different conversation, but I think that it's very interesting, the kind of what you can do when it comes to streamlining, especially that intake process. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I don't know if yeah, I mean, because I think there's like two pieces there. Because like you have the data collection component, which I think, we already, apparently, we're already there in terms of the technology being able to, sound realistic, sound good. I mean, this model, you can interrupt it and it will like stop and let you finish your sentence, and it won't interrupt you. And like you can program like
that's
how long it
awesome.
should wait. But but like apparently we're already there on that piece. But then you're talking about, it sounds like part of what you're talking about is going the next layer deeper and actually applying analysis to the information that's collected. And I think we're actually pretty good on that stuff too, if you give the model enough context. But this is even getting wilder, because I don't know if you saw the new model, OpenAI preview, 01 preview. Did you see that come out? I think it was like last week.
I think so. Yeah.
I don't know if you've had the chance to look through the reports. They put together this like study report where they show its abilities compared to like existing models. And basically what 01 preview is, it's a new model from OpenAI that, the last one was GPT 4.0. And they started over. They said, all right, we're going to start over with a new model series called 01 or 01. And they gave it a new name because it works fundamentally differently than the other models. And the way it works differently is they basically did two things. They gave it time to respond, like they no longer expected to respond instantaneously. And number two, they require it to use chain of thought reasoning. So it, in the background, goes through the prompt and thinks it all the way through. And they actually don't show you the chain of thought because they think it's like too proprietary and too like
Probably is.
risky.
Yeah.
And but in their research paper page, they show you 3 or like 4 or 5 examples of the chain of thought, the actual chain of thought reasoning. And what's eerie about it is the chain of thought reasoning, when you're reading through it, it is not like a normally structured like ChatGPT response where, it's like, here's bullet 1, bullet 2, bullet 3. Here are the things you need to know about this. And in conclusion, da, da, da. It's not like a beautifully formatted it reads like the way, like if you're trying to solve a hard problem and you're thinking it through in your mind, it reads like what you would be saying to yourself in your head. It's like, well, it says this, but that doesn't make any sense. I can't, I don't know what that means. Well, let's try this. Okay, well, that didn't work. And then let's try this instead. And it writes it out. That kind of like brain rambling that a human person would do. It writes it out step by step by step by step, line by line by line. And then there's a particularly shocking example I'm sorry, I'm rambling about this, but this is
good.
Very exciting. There's a particularly shocking example on the report where they have it decode a complex cipher, where they give it like a complicated string of letters, and it's like, all right, we'll figure out what this says in its decoded form. And 4.0 just kind of gives up right away. But 01 goes through this like 30 pages of like chain of thought reasoning, analyzing the cipher and trying different approaches to break it apart. And it eventually figures it out that it's like, well, it's like a 2-letter combination where each letter has a digit variable that gets averaged together, and the average of the 2 letters corresponds to and it figures out this complex thing. And of course it does it in like a minute.
Yeah.
And it's, so the reason that occurred to me is this idea of applying legal analysis to these problems is about to get way more weird and way more effective.
100%. I mean,
think we're already there.
Yeah, I mean, it's, people are saying, like I said, the whole premise behind starting and building Eleanor was that I want to see if I can build something that will actually replace me, replace my thought analysis in the probate space, right? Just think about that from and people might say, well, yeah, there's hallucinations, there's going to be, errors and stuff, and it's never going to actually replace me. Like client facing, it'll never, that's not the intent. It's to have that knowledge base to where all my team members, instead of asking me, 15 questions a day, they're asking Eleanor or, whatever that knowledge base is for you, 15 questions a day, right? And I can spend that time, bringing in new business or, working on the firm, other stuff, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think like in particularly process driven areas of law where, you know, there's not a ton of like variation in the rules or how they get applied. It's like, these are the rules for doing a probate. These are the rules for doing a trademark application or whatever. Um, I think that this kind of approach is going to be more and more effective. I I don't know if we're there yet on like complex litigation analysis, for example. Like for my part, I haven't been that impressed with a lot of the like legal research models and stuff like
Yeah, me
that.
neither.
That I think it's just too much data for that,
Mhm.
like too many tokens worth of like knowledge out there for them to reliably catch everything and all the nuances. Like I think the models are getting there, and maybe O1 is going to do a better job. I mean, as another sidebar, you got to check like the scores. Like it went from the 11th percentile in math competitions to now in like the 92nd percentile. Like it's considered like top 500 performer of math in like anyway. So, but maybe that's going to change now with these new models. The research will get better, but I've been a little like less confident on it replacing people immediately in that space. But I have found that it's still very valuable for like ideating about like, let's say I have a litigated case and I'm like, well, this person's making this, stupid argument. How do I fight this stupid argument? Give me like 6 different examples or whatever of how we can rebut this. And then it might have some good ideas, or at least, it may not be able to cite the case, but it may be able to tell you, uh, go check this out. So
And I think you're right. I think when it comes to more almost boilerplate practices of law that require, probate is a very form and statute driven process, right? I mean, here are the statutes. Here's what you can do. Here's what, and there's obviously a lot of strategy involved when it comes to which, putting the puzzle together. And that's where people screw up probate, is because they don't understand all of the pieces that are available, right? When it comes to putting it
mm,
together. So
yeah,
there's that component. But at the end of the day, though, the number of I would say analysis, or the number of pieces that go to the puzzle for the entire picture are very limited in
yeah,
comparison to other areas of law, right? So
yeah,
if you're able to, and that's what I'm going through the process now of, I mean, I'm uploading, and I think it's all about, I think the problem with these GPTs, and I think a problem with, all these, AI driven databases where, especially the legal research and writing that you just talked about, right? I think the problem there is the data source. Okay.
mm,
I think you just hit on it and you said that there's too much data. And I think you're 1,000% on that. And so what I think people should be doing, and what I'm currently doing, is I am hand picking pieces of data. And I'm being very, very intentional about how I handpick those, how I upload them into the GPT. And then and then I'm using, training, actual Q&A training, and providing messaging prompts, when it comes to the actual training piece, right?
yeah,
And I think that is the absolute key on how to significantly reduce hallucinations, significantly reduce uh, errors and just wrong answers, right? Because
yeah,
if you're in control of the data source, and the data is it is what it is, right? And I'll tell you, it's been a little bit of a challenge, and we're working through it, and it's actually gotten much, much better. But, the GPTs always wanna pull from some sort of general knowledge database, right, when they don't know the answer. It's hard for them to say, "Hey, I don't know the answer." I've done a lot of training on that, but what the response I get now is that I don't that's not part of my data set, please talk to an attorney. And,
yeah,
like, it's taking me a while to get there, but we're getting there from that perspective.
yeah. No, I think there's something there, that, when you have these huge because when you look at, I think case text is one of them. They have these giant repositories of case law, and what they've done on the back end is they've embedded these huge databases of documents into a vector database, into a vector store. They've broken apart all these cases into chunks, and they've passed these chunks into a vector store, which is, we've talked about it a little bit before. It's a database for storing semantic meaning. So like not just like keywords, but like what does that chunk of text actually mean? And the way that we come up with that meaning and that way of storing it is we run it through a language model, and the language model outputs like this complex string of numbers and letters that represent a position in the database. And then when you ask a question later, it references those other things and they compare the difference between them so they can figure out, is this a related query or not? But when you have these giant, like, many millions of page database where you have all these cases and statutes and you're passing in these questions, like the models are so sensitive to like how big of a chunk was passed in, how much overlap can there be between chunks, like can you pull from other sections, like, and it's easy to lose context. Like if the model returns like the middle chunk of a case rather than the entire case, so it like maybe forgets a couple of the beginning facts, or it'll return the most common answer rather than the watershed case that completely changed the rule of law in this area, a year ago. Like, so it's a tricky problem, I think, but I'm sure they'll figure it out at some point, how to deal with that as the models get better and embedding practices get better. But I'm with, though that's a long answer to say, I'm with you on keeping your data set tight and confined to what you needed to know, because it's more likely to get the right answer. It's more likely to not bring in irrelevant context.
Yeah, and what I've learned is that, anything that comes outside the box when it comes to tech, there's always work you needed to do to it, whether you're tweaking different things through custom automations or this or that with a CRM or anything like that. But especially when it comes to custom GPTs, even when you're starting with your own data set, right? You're still having to do training. I mean, I'm doing like at least 30 minutes of training a day, of where I'm asking questions I know the answers to, and I'm looking at the responses, and I'm saying, well, what about this? And then I'm training and saying, hey, Eleanor, next time you provide a response on this, make sure that you include this as part of the response. Like, for example, it was one of the questions was, and I'm constantly doing this where I'm like, assets are 25,000, heirs are surviving spouse and 2 kids, and there's 5,000 in debts. What's the best way to get through probate and to maximize assets and minimize debts? So the response goes in and it starts giving me, detailing out my different options in probate, right? And it's amazing where we are now, and we've just started. So, but one
Yeah.
of the questions, for example, was that it was making an assumption that the surviving spouse was the biological or adopted parent of all the children in its analysis, and saying, hey, here are your options for probate. Here are the actual breakdown in the heirs of percentages of who gets what, right? I said, hey, and so what about the surviving spouse? Why did you assume that she was the biological or adopted parent and that she was automatically getting the first 20,000, right, in the analysis? So that's something that you have to train on, because the GPT is not there. So I'm training it and saying, next time you ask me next time a question is posed where a surviving spouse is included as one of the heirs, you need to ask me before you do your analysis whether or not she's the biological or adopted parent, if I've not provided that data. And now every single time after that I include that, she's asking me, are they the biological or adopted parent of all children?
Yeah. And that's just that's just a great like prompting tactic, no matter what you're doing. Like if you're building a bot or if you're just asking a bot for help with marketing or whatever, like that's just a great prompting technique, is to, at the end of your prompt, be like, please ask me between 5 and 10 additional questions so that you can have more context to give me a better answer. And then it'll ask you like 5 to 10 questions, and they're usually really good, keen, insightful questions that will elicit great additional context. And you give that, and then sure enough, the response that you get is that much more nuanced and that much more applicable to what you're doing. Because that's, at the end of the day, that's what these models are all about. Is like they lack context. Like they have all the context in the world, and by extension, they have minimal context about what you're asking. Like if you don't have any prior like contextual information and you ask a bot like, how do you deal with probate? Like it's just going to give you some random boilerplate answer about, the polling that it got from its internet database. But like that information might be applicable to Florida or New Jersey or, California, and it might be applicable to spouses or kids or who knows what. So like it needs, I mean, just like a human person, it needs context, but it needs even more context than a human person because it's coming at it with nothing. Like at least like if you hire somebody, they're probably they might be in your state of residence. They might know, well, we're in Missouri. We probably only handle, they may have some built-in context, but an AI model has no built-in context. So you have to remember to give all of that for it to actually be useful.
Yeah, and I think that, the nuance piece is also important, right? Is that training it on your nuance of law, right? So, and the first thing when we started is no outside sources. So, the Eleanor is not able to pull data from anywhere else at all, other than the data set that I've uploaded to her. And I think that's super important for quality control. I mean, you have to start there. And I think then, making sense of like, just start inputting data, like cases that are important in car accident cases. Like, here's my case law database. You have it on on a OneDrive, or you have it in some folder on your computer. Start handpicking those cases that are the most relevant cases and upload those only. So when you go to when the bot goes, or when your GPT goes to write a brief on summary judgment cases, right? It's only pulling from your cases. It's not pulling from case text where there's 500,000 cases on car accidents, right? It's simply pulling from your 15, 20, 30 cases that you've hand selected and curated, quality controlled as the gold standard, right? And then it's pulling that information and writing your brief based upon that, right? And you're
Yeah.
going to get, your product is going to be 1,000 times better. And it's also going to be, the quality control will be there. And that's what I think that these models are lacking, is quality control. And then that just takes more work on your end to curate it.
Yeah. One thing I've been shocked that more case management platforms, like legal case management platforms, have not done yet is something that more and more like industry agnostic tools have started doing. And my favorite example is always Notion, where they have taken your whole account and embedded it in a vector database. And like, what does that mean? Well, it means that there's a little chat bubble at the bottom right corner where you click on it and you can ask anything of your entire account. Like, what was that, note that I took about, Jim Smith, where his mom died, or whatever. And it can answer the question and also find the note where that thing happened. Right. Like, so I've been kind of surprised that more legal case management has not jumped on this, because it feels like to me it would be so valuable to be able to like just ask a little chat bot in my case management system, like, hey, I had a phone call with Jane Smith the other day. Can you pull that up? I don't even remember what it was about. I'm trying to remember, what did I quote her for the fee or something like that. Like, how convenient would that be, rather than having to fish through and find the case and find the note entry and all that. I've been a little surprised that we haven't seen more of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, one of the ways that I'm going to be training my Eleanor is that I'm thinking about the idea of transcribing calls with clients, right? It's me providing legal advice to clients, and then using that transcript to upload it to that specific database on that specific topic. So, right, it's basically me regurgitating what I believe is the gold standard in probate for whatever complex issue or whatever issue we're working on that day, and then using my own words to train the model, but doing it in a way of having the transcripts, and then basically asking questions, and then me providing answers, right? And then
Yeah.
using that as a training piece. And that's kind of I think is, once I get to a certain point, that's the next level I'll go, is start training with, but you got to be careful with that, because I mean, it's just, like I said, I'm very, very, very specific on what I'm actually going to upload, because I think that just keeps the integrity of the model. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's a very interesting idea. And I think the advantage of an approach like that, whether it's for client calls or for something else, is that it happens automatically. Like, you don't have to worry about, being super detailed about, here's how this works, here's how that works. It's getting a transcript of a phone call where you explained how it worked, and you don't have to re-explain to the model. You may have, 200 instances in the model's data store now, that of you explaining this concept to a client, and hopefully it can learn from that. So it's an interesting approach, as long as you don't have any and ones in there where you were drinking too much the night before and you're like, I don't remember how this works, or but
No, see, and that's also like that's why it would never be automatic, because it would basically be I would basically put it in have them pull transcripts in folders, and not because of what you said, drinking too much the night before, but because you know, let's say there's a topic where you're like, well, let's just let's explore this, and let's let me come up with a better solution, or here's a potential solution, but and then you come up later and you're like, okay, now this is the different solution that I have. This is a better solution after I've done some research, right? So, but it's just one way to kind of take training to the next level. But I'd read the transcript, say, yeah, this is the gold standard. I know this is the gold standard, and then upload it to the platform to be able to put reference to.
So, and this kind of, I think, segues into part of our topic for today, which is like this idea, like, what do you think is the impact of all this? Like, this stuff is wild, and I think it's getting wilder by the day. Like, literally, it feels like every week we're getting some major announcement of some new AI model or new feature that is when people start taking advantage of it is going to be crazy. What is this? What does this mean to the legal profession, to the jobs market in legal, to all that kind of stuff? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, yeah, and I know we talked before about the impact of AI, and how that affects let's just say the number of team members you have on your team, right? Um, I think that it's always going to be used as a incredible supplement to human power, right? Um, we've always had this premise of, can we build a law firm that just kind of where there's almost no people? You can, but you can't scale that. It's not scalable. Okay. And what I've come to realize is that having the right people in the right seats is always going to be there, right? No matter what AI tools you have. Now you might have, let's say, if you have one intake specialist or intake manager, right? And you're using that an AI created a process to in call intakes, right? There's still always going to be somebody who needs to step in and call people back, have that sort of human to human connection. So I don't see it. I see it changing the game when it comes to being able to scale without having as many people, for sure.
Sure.
But I think that there'll always be key seats that are always going to be required in law firms, because people want that human to human connection. They want empathy, even if it's a chatbot providing empathy, they still want that human connection. I mean, we all want human
Yeah.
connection on a daily basis, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's always going to be an important part. Can you add more cases and do more legal work and produce better results with AI? Absolutely, but I think that the human component is always going to be a constant.
Yeah. Yeah. I think my prediction is that there's going to be it's going to follow a similar trend to what happened in the kind of financial advisory wealth management space, because some people probably remember, like, back in the 80s and even through the 90s and probably even into the early 2000s, like, you didn't really have financial advisors. Like, you had stockbrokers that traded stocks for you, and they tried to find you the best deals, and supposedly, and of course this all caused a lot of problems, and there were ethical conflicts and disasters. But then we started coming out with index funds and ETFs, and Jack Bogle with the the ETF and index fund movement. And all of a sudden people started realizing, well, put your money in an index fund. This is not financial advice, and it's going to perform pretty damn well relative to a professional advisor anyway. And I'm not being charged the fees, and just like the technology shifted pretty radically. And all of a sudden, the role as a financial advisor wasn't to be a stockbroker anymore. Gradually over time, they started shifting more to like fiduciary fee models, where they're like taking a percent under management, and it became much more of a relationship game,
Yeah.
where you're trying to manage these relationships. You're trying to hold people's hands when they're scared that they're going to lose their nest egg, and you're trying to help people make smart decisions about planning for retirement and planning for your kids' college, and getting to know little Jimmy. And does Jimmy really want to go to college? Maybe he wants to go to the military. Like, it became much more of a relationship game. And I think the same thing is going to happen in law, where our jobs are going to be a lot less about pushing documents. They're going to be a lot less about, you know, checking off tasks, and they're going to be a lot more about helping people when they're going through in many cases, one of the worst experiences, the worst times in their life. Like maybe they just got in a horrible car accident and they need to go through that, or somebody just died and they need to go through the court system, the last place you want to be on earth. So my suspicion is it'll give us more time to be empathetic, and get a lot of the grunt work off. But and definitely, hopefully, maybe scale more. So like handle more cases, or hopefully it'll mean greater access to justice for people who we still get people all the time they can't afford our fees. Like, is there a world where AI makes it profitable to run a leaner firm and serve more of the market that used to just not be served at all? Like, I don't know. I think the answer is probably yes. So I'm excited to see what that looks like myself.
I just think there's so many different opportunities, no matter what direction you want to go, right? You want to scale, here's your opportunities. You don't want to scale, here are your opportunities, right?
Yep.
Especially when it comes to, I mean, we had a guest last week on our podcast, and he was talking about do a list, make an audit of all the things that you're doing throughout the day, right? And I think that's important to do. And I've kind of started taking his advice just generally on, let's make a master list of what I do during a given week, right? What can be, eliminated, what can be automated, what can be delegated, right? Is kind of his approach, right? I think that same approach can be done for everybody on your team, right? What are they doing?
Yeah.
And I look through it through the eyes of my team members. How many times a week are they going to a spreadsheet or digging through their computer looking for something, right?
Yep.
Let's just start with that. Whether it's a document, whether it's a template, whether it's a fees list for the recorder of deeds, right? I mean, all this information that we use. I mean, if you take every single thing that we use in our practices, right? Every piece of information, right? And input it into a GPT. That's what I'm doing with Eleanor right now, right? There is no need basically what you'll have on your computer screen is Eleanor or custom GPT and your case management system, right? And then that's all you're using. And that's what we're doing now is, hey, how many pages, what's the recording fee in Jefferson County for a 3-page document?
Mhm.
Eleanor says, she breaks down the math. Here what it is for the first page. Here for the second page. It's a $27 document, right? You get that in a second, 1 second, right? When it comes to a response, as opposed to having to, click through, find it, do the math, put it in the letter, et cetera, right? When it comes to those sort of things. So that's just an example, but I think it's all about reducing wasted time, right?
Yeah.
Especially when it's like, oh, hey, go find this affidavit of heirship for a married couple, the one we did last. Well, I don't know what case that is in. If you want to search through your documents in, FileVine, you can search affidavit of heirship, and then you have 25 documents, right? And then you can search through to see which one is which, or, based upon the title. But you don't need to do that. You can simply
Yeah.
upload your most recent affidavit of heirship. That's the gold standard into the GBT. And then when it's time to use it, please provide me with an affidavit of heirship for a married couple.
Yeah.
Et cetera. And then boom, there it is. You pull it down, and then you're off to the races. I mean, just those
Yeah.
simple things are just they're becoming a massive operations change already.
Yeah. And while historically that would not have worked for longer documents, like the max token output for a lot of the models right now is, I think it's like 4,000 tokens or something like that, which is roughly 2,000, a little over 2,000 words. So any document that's longer than 2,000 words is going to be too long, at least for a single output. But what I found was really interesting and has not been talked about enough is with this new O1 preview model, and eventually O1 non-preview, the max output tokens is 65,000. So 65,000, we're talking about a 50,000, a 40,000 words, 35 to 40,000 words that can be output in one prompt output.
That's
So
crazy.
you could ask it like generate me like I don't know how many words are in an average page, but it's, that's dozens and dozens and dozens of pages that it could output at one response. So like, you're talking about writing like you could write a 50-page petition that is accurate and well thought out with the new model, which is not yet. It's available to like paid pro subscribers through the chat window, but it's not available through the API yet unless you're like an enterprise user. So you can't like, you could probably demo with it in the chat window, but can't use it for custom GPTs and stuff yet. But that's going to be game changing, I think, for like document output. But one thing I haven't messed with is the function calling ability of custom GPTs. Like if you go in there and you're like editing it, it's either custom GPTs or in the assistance API, where you can add your own custom functions. Like let's say you wanted to trigger a Zap, like a Zapier application that would go and push the data into Gavel or run a Gavel scenario automatically. You could do that. Like you could program a function that'll call the Zap and trigger that, and then return the document or push the document into Google Drive or something. Even for long documents, right? I haven't played with that enough yet, but maybe October's the month. We'll see.
What about this idea? And this is something, I mean, so one, just as, a thought or something that we're doing is that I'm not including any client information at all into my custom GPT. Zero client information. I'm always going to have that wall up for a very, very long time, at least until some things change, or at least there's a little bit more comfortability. But for now, it's not. There's zero client information. But I want to kind of pitch this as an idea, though. What if you built a GPT, right? You uploaded what I've done through, let's say, one of your document automation platforms. I upload an entire set of documents to it. Okay. And I'm talking, all of our documents that we have for every single specific venue. And I train the model to input my probate intake form into it and ask it to fill out the documents and provide those as a document automation platform. You think that's possible sometime in the future or even now, or no?
Yeah, I think it's probably possible for a couple of reasons. Because for one, you can probably write a custom function, and if you don't know how to write custom functions, you can just ask. I would probably ask Claude 3.5 Sonnet to write the function. It's better at code, or O1 Preview is pretty good at code too. Actually, very good at code. Write the function, and you could basically probably just do a webhook and pass through like, a couple pages worth of contextual text. And then the model might be able to just do because you go into Zapier and you go to the ChatGPT node or whatever, and you can do an extract structured data step. You could probably do that either inside the function as it's passing out of the chat window, or potentially on the back end where you're just passing raw text over to the extract structured data step and be like, hey, pull out the client's name, first name, last name, pull out the date of death, pull out the decedent's name, pull out all that. And it will just chunk all that up into JSON or a JavaScript notation where you can have little object, like in Zapier when you're like mapping parameters or whatever. Those are just JavaScript objects.
Yeah.
And you could probably break it up like that and then push that data into Gavel questionnaire, create new questionnaire node in Zapier or wherever, or make.com. Martin Kravchenko just finished the Gavel.
I saw that.
Make connector. So if anybody wants to hook Gavel up to Make, get in touch with Martin. He's your man. And speaking of which, I just finished the Earth Class Mail Make connector. If anybody wants access to that, let me know. But
what is it?
Yeah, good. Earth Class Mail. It's sorry, I don't mean to run off tangent, but it's our virtual mail company. They receive all of our mail and scan it all in. Well, I made a Make connector for it last week.
Cool.
In case you want to. It's enabled some cool stuff, but yeah, I think you could do that. I think you could do that. Pass data directly into your Gavel questionnaire from the chat window.
Yeah, it's just a thought, and not that I want to go down that direction, but anyway. So let me ask you this question. We had talked about this before, and it was kind of one of the prompts for, not one of the prompts, but one of the topics. The main topic for today is kind of, was created from a conversation about, should staff and paralegals and people in the legal profession be, worried about AI, and like, should they be, worried about their jobs when it comes to, for example, Dan Schnurbusch is, obsessed with, AI and is constantly building new tools and, and automating things, right? So that your staff doesn't have to do that, right? If anybody has somebody who's as a boss or has an owner who's really into automations, is that a good thing or a bad thing for them, in your opinion?
Um, I think it can be both. It can be both, depending on who you are. And I think that like staff, like law firm staff, who are going to do the best over the next 10 years are people with high EQ, high emotional intelligence. They're good at talking to people. They're good at hand holding and managing expectations and dealing with high emotions and strong feelings and navigating those conversations and keeping people happy. Like I think the role of the client happiness manager or the client care specialist role, I think, is going to be a much more valuable set of skills over the next 10 years. Because that's the stuff that is not going to be ever automatable. Like you can do a lot, but we can't ever remove entirely that human connection. So I think that role is going to be very valuable. I think, we're going to start seeing a downplaying of a lot of the administrative stuff, like preparing documents. And hopefully one day the courts will allow us to like have a public facing API where we can like access court records and file documents through the API and electronically and not have to go through the crappy court websites.
Probably never, Dan.
Yeah.
No, I think that's going to be one of those things that they're going to. I mean, they lock into these contracts with these vendors, and they're like 10-year contracts. And it's like, well, we can change something in 10 years, but
Yeah. And Missouri, God bless them, is surprisingly one of the better states as far as electronic e-filing systems. But I think we're gonna see like a downplaying of a lot of that administrative stuff as it's out, it's given over to AI. And I think a lot of the staff people who that's their bread and butter, like that's what they're used to and comfortable with, they might not do so well. Like they probably need to. My advice would be for staff people or paralegals who are worried about this automation and stuff like that would be to get comfy with technology. Like
yeah.
be like instead of being afraid of it, like throw a lasso around it and ride that thing. You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
be the person who knows how to be the fastest person in your firm and you can output 10 times the documents of the other paralegals who don't know how to use these tools. And you're going to be able to blow away your employers if you're able to leverage these tools on your own, if as long as it's permitted and all that stuff. But if the firm is already using them, being somebody who knows how to jump in, get your hands dirty, understand the settings, like figure out what the tools do, how they work, and a lot of that's just like learn like you would learn anything else. Like go on YouTube or just fiddle around, look at the settings menu of your software and figure out like what can I actually fiddle with. Like don't break anything, but like education does not stop at the end of high school and college. So be proactive. I'd say is get in front of it, and I think you'll be okay. I don't think it's going to be like a mass disemployment for people necessarily, but I could be wrong. We'll see. The world's changing fast. I could be out of a job here in a couple months. You never know.
Hey, you know what? I think that one of the things you said was really important when it comes to embracing the technology and saying, "Hey, like I'm really interested. I want to learn about this," right? As opposed to being like afraid of it.
Right.
And asking your employer, "Hey, is there any training? Like, where can I train on this?" And like all these platforms and all this stuff, either they have training materials. Somebody out there has created training materials, right, on YouTube or that's selling, some sort of program online, right, for $3 for an entire, 12 video set on how to build a custom GPT and how to train it.
Mm,
Whatever it is, just be willing to do that. And if certain components of your job are replaced from automation, then just be willing to be nimble and kind of evolve into like, hey, here's identifying. Well, here's a space where I can provide more value right here, right? This got taken away. This is the value I can provide. And I think that
yeah.
most of our staff are doing a lot of monotonous work anyways. So it all comes down to like, hey, if you guys could replace this monotonous work here by automation, I could spend more time talking to people on the phone, right? And
Right.
I could spend more time, doing market outreach and doing more,
Mhm.
marketing and bringing in new cases. All these other things that are super valuable to law firms. So
Yep. Right. Absolutely. I call in leads. I mean, there's like people, it's one of those things where like sometimes people don't know like what they would do with their time until they have the time just to blow. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, like, um, like people kind of had that doomsaying prophesying about technology since like the invention of the wheel is like, oh, this is gonna put, um, put hand carts out of existence, or like, or you know what I mean, or
Yeah. The
like handmade.
factories, Yeah.
What is it? The those old plateaus or platforms that they'd carry kings on in like Egypt and stuff. Like this is gonna put these guys out of work. It's like, well, they'll find something else to do. Like you humans are very good at filling the time allotted to them. So like as we get rid of stuff, I think exactly like paralegals, staff members, there's going to be other roles for them. Like maybe you just have a better client experience. Like how many attorneys call their clients like once a month? Like and that might be a good firm. Like what if your staff were able to call them once a week and check in like an injury firm and see like how's your treatment going at it, like and genuinely engage like that, like if they had time to do that. So we'll,
Yeah.
we'll see. I'm pretty excited about it though.
All right. I think we're getting close to time here for today's episode. So let's do our tech tip of the week. So for me, I'm just going to just piggyback on the things I've been saying in the last, couple episodes about, creating a custom GPT. Just it's people are honestly, when I first heard about custom GPTs, I thought, God, these things are going to be so hard to create, and I need a code background and all this stuff. It is so simple. I mean, you literally go into ChatGPT, you click on the create a custom GPT, and then it starts asking you questions. What do you want this thing to do? Like, what do you want to do? And then just watch one video on YouTube of somebody about creating a GPT and how to train it and upload documents, and you are literally off to the races within minutes.
Yeah.
It's insane. I mean, I even asked it to create its own picture, right? And say, hey, can you create a picture of yourself? I want it to look like a Missouri attorney who does probate work, right? So it's super cool. It's super easy to start. So just start one. Put up those guardrails though. Don't give it any outside access to anything, nothing, zero. And then start putting in your firm's kind of crucial, pieces of treasure that sets you apart from other firms, right? Build that database, build that treasure trove of knowledge that, if someday you want to sell your law firm, right, having that in a easy to access format is going to significantly increase the value of your firm.
Yeah. I hadn't thought about how cool that would be. Like if I were out there buying a law firm and I'm stepping into something I don't understand. I kind of understand it, but like where do they, what software do they use for this? Like what are the main passwords and stuff like you could put all that in a
100%.
lot, and just like you'd have your personalized liaison that's like your onboarding assistant. Welcome to the new firm you just bought. Here's everything you need to know. Like
Here's everything you need to know, and then here's all of the things that we think are important that we've developed and put in here over the last 10, 15 years. I mean, imagine what that would look like. Because you're not usually attorneys have that in their brains, right? I am the key person. Here's my law firm. I'm going to sell it. Well, you're the one who has all the knowledge in your brain. You have not put it on paper. You have not put it anywhere, right? And so I think that's huge.
All right, John, there's our next business. Start a business in M&A area, helping companies turn all of their knowledge into a chatbot so they can sell at higher valuations.
I'm just going to do that on my own and just for my own law firm, which is what we're doing. But yeah, I think everybody should start with that framed context of this is what I should be doing, and just start somewhere, because in 10 years, it's going to be absolutely amazing what you've built. I mean, even 6 months, like 6 months from now, it's going to be crazy to see what our custom GPT Eleanor is doing for our firm. I mean, it's just going to be insane.
Yeah. Now, my tip of the week is just to check out VAPI.ai. Give it a look. It's so clean, so easy. The platform is so easy to navigate and understand. There's no code required. Just create an account, a free account, and on their landing page, like they have a button on screen where you can click, and it's like, give us a demo now. Like as the hero image, you click a button, it says activate your microphone, and you can immediately start talking to one of their voice assistants. But it's real easy to crack in there and start exploring and putting one together and teaching it and understanding. It's really well laid out, really easy to understand how it works. Build yourself an assistant have ChatGPT write the script for your firm, the call script for your firm, just to get started, and play with it. Pick a voice you like, and have fun, and see if you have any cool ideas on what to do with it.
Awesome.
So that's it for this week, guys. If you enjoyed the episode, I encourage you to leave us a 5-star review at Spotify podcasts and Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts, because that helps other listeners find us. And if you want to take the conversation offline, well, join us in the Legal Tech Collective Facebook group, where we talk tech and AI all the time in the legal space. So that's it for this week. Appreciate it, guys. Thank you, John. Always a pleasure as always.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it, Dan. See you next week.